everybody. This is Igniting American Manufacturing. I'm your host, Rory Francis, and I'm actually sitting here with a gentleman I'm really excited to talk with, Mike Rosen, AIA lead AP,
yes,
architect from St. Augustine currently.
St. Augustine, Florida. Yes.
Originally Philly.
Originally Philadelphia. Yes.
Okay. All right. And you're per se, I mean, you're an architect professionally, but you're quite a bit of an entrepreneur as well.
I guess you could call me a serial entrepreneur. Yeah, I've done a few things in the course of my life.
Well, you've done some really, really interesting things. I want to get into, there's quite a few topics I want to get into. Just want to highlight some of the cool things you've done, you know. But start with telling me the premise, and you just actually, before the show, we're talking a little bit about your philosophy and what you're trying to accomplish and your thoughts on the industry as a whole, if you can kind of reiterate that for me.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, well, I mentioned that really it's indicative of today's society, right? People aren't building their own environment. So the whole concept of how I view construction and architecture and how people, I think, are going to want to live is putting them in an environment and teaching them and giving them the tools to be able to build out their environment. And so the idea is they would start by building, creating the materials to build the buildings that they're going to live in, and then the buildings they're going to work in, you know, and then the buildings they're going to shop in, and then the buildings they're going to go to school in, and eventually they're building their own environment. So that's the approach.
Well, that's it there, and you know that goes back to smart manufacturing and smart cities and infrastructure. We're going to get into that a little bit. Ty Pennington, the TV celebrity, has a build show. You did some work for him.
I did. Actually, that's how I got to St. Augustine in the first place. Okay. So many years ago, this was 10, 12 years ago, I did his house here in Palm Coast, and it was a TV show, the whole build of the house. And the name of the show was First to the Future. And so we designed all these futuristic materials into the house. Some of which are still not, you know, in practice. So it was a very forward-looking project. Okay. And so he invited me to work on the house, and that's how I was introduced to St. Augustine.
So sustainability, did you build some of that in there? We're seeing fly
absolutely,
yeah.
The house was totally sustainable. It had solar collectors. We captured rainwater. We used sustainable materials, recycled materials. All the solar orientations were proper. We used smart glass, you know, the ones that had the nano robots in them. So it was very, very sophisticated. And I think the actual feedback and the calculations on the house was that its energy bills were minimal. Yeah.
Okay. I've been reading and writing a lot about, you know, off-gassing of concrete, and I'm big proponent of fly ash in that. Any fly ash in there?
No, we didn't. We used some interesting materials, you know, that were new to the industry. So we had all these manufacturers that, you know, essentially supplied us the materials that we needed to use on the project.
So you're an entrepreneur, but you do a lot of work, really good work for people in workforce development. I'm going to get into that a little bit later if we can get to it today. But Madonna. Tell me a little bit about what you do with Madonna.
Well, this is, again, many, many years ago. I used to study at the Kabbalah Center in Manhattan, where she was also a member. And you know, we were introduced to one another. And at the time, she was visiting Malawi, Africa, where she adopted her son, David. And they needed help in that orphanage. I helped them do a master plan, and I designed a little orphanage, or a little building for housing. You know, the kids, and so I got to go there and put the cornerstone in the ground when that happened.
Okay. Well, that's, I mean, anytime you're working with children and you're helping, that's a really good thing. So
that was a very heartwarming project. Yeah, it was life-changing. Yeah, absolutely. Malawi is one of the poorest countries in the world, and yeah, the poverty there was very significant.
Well, and I appreciate you. I tell you, you know, my experience, you know, when you help people, it's probably, for me, it's one of the most selfish things. It's so uplifting. It's, you know, it's always been good for me, and I appreciate when people do that. And I think that the return on satisfaction is exponential. So, and it's also needed. It's also needed. So, worthy cause. So again, architect, and we talked a little bit on ties, a little bit in sustainability. Talk a bit about how or when you got into sustainability.
Well, I did my thesis on solar energy in the 70s. So back at Temple University.
Okay, so you're a little ahead of the game there.
So yeah,
okay.
well, it was actually during the Carter administration when we had all those gas lines and the oil embargo.
Sure.
So solar energy was a hot topic when I was going to school. After the embargo died, we kind of forgot about it, but I never did. I always stayed with it, and I kind of developed my architectural practice based on designing solar projects. And so I designed one of the first platinum LEED projects in Philadelphia.
So leadership in energy efficient design.
Correct. That program kind of started in the 2008, 2009 timeframe. And right around that time, I was working on a very unique townhouse project in Philadelphia and designed it to LEED Platinum standard. So it was the first LEED approved townhome projects in Philadelphia.
I'm a LEED AP. I can't remember what AP stands for again.
Accredited professional.
Okay, correct. So a great organization, and they've moved the ball. LEED, lean, smart cities. You were in China for an extended period. And what did you do? So, what did you do in China? What was that?
Well, this was in the like around 2010, 2011 time frame. And this is right around the time China was really trying to, actually they were forced to get into the sustainability sort of arena. And they did an international competition for a 40-story high-rise in Hefei, China. And my firm, at the time I was working with the Martin Architectural Group in Philadelphia, and we won the competition. So we got invited to China to work on this project, and I guess the Chinese government got familiar with some of my work, and they invited me to propose a new theory for a model city. The intent was, in China, the problem in China is most people live on the East Coast and the West Coast, and we're trying to get people to move to the middle. So along the high-speed train lines, they wanted to create a city, middle of nowhere, and they wanted a prototype for that city, 4 million people. And so that's really, I came up with a concept to create what they called low-carbon industrial cities. And it's a city that everything is carbon neutral.
Well, I can go 100 different ways with that. I talk about smart manufacturing and smart factory quite a bit, and then I've segued into smart infrastructure. I'm only starting to get up a little bit on smart cities, but I can see the natural progression of that. And in that, there's a lot of nanocent tools like BIM and digital twin. Any experience along those lines?
Well, I think I'm probably credited with creating one of the first digital twins to be created of Philadelphia in the mid-90s. We created a digital twin of the city of Philadelphia and exhibited it at the Franklin Institute.
So for our audience, explain, and I'm throwing BIM and terms out there for our audience. Building image management for BIM, it's 3D design, but talk a little bit about what a digital twin is and why it's important.
Okay. Well, a digital twin essentially is a replica of a city in the computer world. It's a three-dimensional model. It's an exact replica. So the concept of a digital twin is a three-dimensional model of something that exists in reality. So what we did in Philadelphia is we built a digital twin of the city, and we were able to navigate it in real time, immersed with a head-mounted display, and what was then called the Philadelphia Virtual Reality Center.
So a metaverse.
Yes.
A metaverse. Yeah. So I deal with it on the manufacturing. Digital twin is very popular with the manufacturing sector, and it's starting. You see it in even the construction process for the plant all the way through, and we see it as a great tool with pre-commissioning. To make sure everything works, and in the BIM model, we're looking at clash detection, make sure everything's aligned, because there's several people contributing to that. So it's phenomenal.
Well, in architecture, it's very commonly used for collision detection and finding all kinds of discrepancies between structural, mechanical, and the electrical systems.
The next part of that is, reality capture in LiDAR.
Absolutely.
Actually, my firm has been doing some of that. And that stuff is, the price point's coming down. It's becoming more and more common. You'll see LiDAR on tripods. You'll actually see robots walking through a factory with a LiDAR scanning on it.
And the drones now.
Photogrammetry and LiDAR drones.
So I did a digital twin of Charlotte where we did use LiDAR to capture a lot of the buildings. Okay. So yeah, that's commonly used now as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So for those, you can do this or I can do this. So LiDAR scanning, you draw something in a BIM model, you produce a digital twin. Reality capture is when you go out and you have a robot or a person walk around with a scanner and actually scans to make sure that you actually installed per your original drawings and everything is correct, and has multiple other purposes, and we can use it for cost and stuff like that. But basically, reality capture is making sure we capture actual reality. It's one thing to draw something.
Absolutely.
Is it actually going to be put in? And we've caught mistakes early on and things like that. So it's just the tech is amazing.
And it's evolved so quickly now. Yeah. And now the drones can now do the cloud capture. Mm-hmm. And so that degree of accuracy is just amazing.
I did the last one. You break down cloud
capture. It's essentially, it sends out little, almost like radar signals from a source, and it captures the distance, and using that, it can emulate the surroundings, pretty much like how a bat knows its surroundings. And so what it does is you can release one of those in an environment, and it literally just captures everything that's around it and builds a three-dimensional model.
So I'm going to go back to China for a second here, and there's no denying it. It's in the news, and there's a lot of talk about geopolitics and tariffs and things like that. Five Eyes Alliance. It's was formed in the 40s following World War II, and it's U.S. and UK, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia, and it was an intelligence organization. And just very recently, they actually had a conference, and they spoke to a bunch of Fortune 500 CEOs. And here's what they told them: you might not be interested in geopolitics, but geopolitics is interested in you. And I say that because it's when we're talking about manufacturing today, and import and export, you can't avoid the conversation. You want to stay agnostic, and you just really can't talk to anybody about anything. Your experience in China, so you're part of a master plan and digital twin, or whether it was called a digital twin, but it was probably BIM and all that involved in that. Having worked over there in your experience, what can we learn from them? What can we do better? What were they doing right? That we actually can employ. We're talking about reshoring constantly. Right. We're talking about bringing that back. What were your takeaways?
Obviously they have several advantages, right? Because of the cost of labor and just the availability for a lot of bodies at a task. They're very competitive with us in that regard. However, there are some things that we can learn from them, and that is because they have the ability to break through bureaucracy. Mm-hmm. They can do things that we can't. That they can take risks and challenges that our bureaucracy just won't let us do. And so, they'll do things that are much more daring and much more experimental than a lot of times we will do. So I found that refreshing. I saw things there, the way they approach to things, where and I'm saying, we would never do it that way, just because of that.
Sure. Well, I have quite a bit of Tesla experience, and the permitting process for Tesla,
right.
and Elon raved about it, to build in China was a lot different than the permitting process when he went and built in Berlin, right. And that's probably some of the difference in the time. This administration is talking about actually working on that permitting process. I think to stay competitive, we need to employ
right.
all those tools that the Chinese have been employing, digital twin and robotics. They've kind of been there before us. I think digital twin, we might be a little closer, but the robotics are definitely.
And they've done it at scale.
Yeah, and scale. You know, well, here's the thing: they've been building factories for 30 years and lift themselves out of poverty.
Exactly.
We need to look at that and say they've done some really good things there. We need to actually own where we have fallen backwards, and to a certain extent, or fallen down, depending on who you ask, and where they've raised themselves up. And we need to start looking at that. The labor thing, our rates aren't going to come down, so we need to overcome that. So we need to do the digital, and we need to do it better. We need to start look at robotics, and we really, here's where we need some help from the government. We need to work on the permitting process and streamlining some of it.
Yeah, I would say that's the key difference, is just how quickly they can shift and change directions where our process is much slower.
The last piece of that, and it's a long conversation, it's workforce development. And I'm just about out of time. I'm going to have you back, and I really want you to come back, and I'd really like to talk about workforce development with you.
Well, that's the key. I mean, it all starts with the people who are going to build it, right?
Yeah, you're right. So that's all we have time for today. We could probably go on for more. This is Rory Francis, and you've been watching Igniting American Manufacturing. See you soon, and we're going to have Mike back.